I just made sure that I did not use company time to focus on my work. Somebody once told me that when somebody hires you to do a job for them and they're paying you, if you're using their time to focus on something else, that's as bad as stealing. That's actually worse because it's not fair and it's not right. So that was the one thing that I ensured, that if I'm going to do this, I made a commitment to myself that I would never use company time to transact on my personal business. And that's something that I never did. In fact, when I told them that I was leaving, I had a promotion. They wanted me to be the head of, I was getting a massive promotion. It was my salary was going to double, but I knew it was time to leave because I had gotten to a point where I wouldn't be able to balance the two.
You're listening to the Black to Business podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the Black to Business podcast. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall, and today's episode, we're diving into how to balance your career and entrepreneurship. So I believe that at some point in our lives, we've daydreamed about being our own bosses, making the rules, and raking in the money. The reality, however, is a lot more different. So you're likely balancing a job and your business, and you're thinking, this is a lot to manage. Or better yet, maybe you feel that it's coming close to time for you to transition and take the big leap full time, but you're thinking, what's the best way to go about this? Listen, it doesn't have to be complicated, and it definitely is not impossible. Today's episode is going to show you exactly how you can balance your dreams and career creatively, from understanding the importance of knowing your workplace policies to knowing when it's the right time to go all in. Our guest today, Mary Sipo, CEO and founder at CEEK, uses her own experience as a blueprint to helping us understand what it takes to find that balance. So let's get right into it. So Mary, welcome to the Black to Business podcast. I'm really excited to have you here. I'm so excited about today's topic and just to learn more about you and what you're doing. So welcome to the Black to Business podcast.
Thank you. I'm super, super excited to be here.
Of course. So I want to get started. I know I definitely want to go into these things more, but just briefly, if you could just let my audience know a little bit about who you are, what is it that you do in your business, and how did you get where you are today?
Sure, absolutely. So I am the founder and CEO of CEEK Virtual Reality, which is a virtual reality streaming platform. And then we also have our associated products, which is a 360 audio headphone, as well as a virtual reality headset. I started out as a deep space engineer. So I've worked for the Boeing company. I was the head of satellite communications at Boeing. I worked for Intelsat, which is now owned by Rupert Murdoch. I also worked for the Aerospace Corporation, which is a research, actually it's the only research or the leading research facility for the U.S. military. And yeah, I hope I haven't left anything out, but that's what I do today. But over my companies, I've worked with the likes of Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, and the list goes on.
Amazing. So I'm excited for today because you've created this unicorn of a company, but you also have such an interesting background. So I want to take it back because today is about, how can those who are listening become, balance your blooming career in entrepreneurship as well. And I know you've done that and had great success. So I want to take it back and start from the beginning. So tell me a little bit about how far were you into your career when you first started entrepreneurship?
Actually, I was pretty far because I remember I started my first company, which was the Spio group. I started that when I was at the Boeing company. So I was working as a head of satellite communications for Boeing Digital Cinema. I had several patents that Boeing had purchased from me as an employee, and then I was also like a liaison between the technical team and the creative teams. At that time, we were working with the likes of Lucasfilms and Fox, 20th Century Fox, and Paramount Studios, all the major movie studios, because we built a technology for distribution of movies over satellite. Those were the patents that Boeing purchased from me. And I was getting a lot of requests, for consulting. So for a lot of the entertainment retailers who also wanted to find a way to use technology to become more efficient, just like the movie theaters had done. And so I knew then that being just one person, there was no way that I was going to be able to service everyone. So that was when I really thought about starting my company. And then I went and I registered my company, the Spio Group, as a consulting company so I could service all these different businesses. What I did after I registered, when I went to register my company, I was given some materials about SCORE, which is a SCORE, I think is like Society of Retired Executives or something like that. I actually took them up. I went and I met with them, and I found some really good resources there.
Love that. Love that. Okay. So now what I have is that you were, like rocket scientist, space engineer. Like, what was that about, and how was your role from day to day in these industries? Because I will say we've never had a rocket scientist or engineer on the podcast.
So early on in my career, my background is in electrical engineering and computer science. My major was in space engineering.
Wow.
And so my first job actually was working on a NASA project. We were working on SETI, which is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. So we were building like heat probes, sending them into space. I was also doing orbital mechanics, which entailed, it's almost like building roads in space, and so I would do designs for satellites to be able to travel or orbit in space without running into each other. And so that's what my day-to-day entailed. And then later on, I've always been interested in the entertainment business side of things. So I went to work for Intelsat, which was also a satellite company. I was still working as a deep space engineer, but this time I wasn't building satellites. I wasn't launching satellites. I was really helping the television networks. So, for example, I work with HBO. If you had content and you wanted to get it from A to B, we would sit down, we would plan it with you, tell you what type of satellite bandwidth you need, what type of earth stations, antennas, all that stuff. That's what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. And then, so I work with a lot of television networks, and then we just kept coming up with more and more technology. I also did, because my role was mainly the space segment, I did things such as transitioning satellites. So if a satellite is at the end of its life, we would move it from the position that it is in space, and we'll move it to what's called a graveyard for satellites. So we'll just move it out of space, out of that place, and then go put it back. So that's what I was doing in addition to, launching satellites. Someone just said recently that, talking about Silicon Valley, the fact that all my satellites launched, successfully. I didn't crash any. So all of them launched successfully. I know that Elon Musk and a few of these people have been having quite a few crashes lately, but mine all are in space, and some of them are still orbiting.
Oh my God. I'm just like, oh my God, it's so wild. And I'm like honored to be speaking to you. But then I know like this is so inspirational for people who are listening. Like we are such magical people. And thank you for sharing that part of your journey. And I want to talk about, because people who are listening, they may be balancing like work and then trying to start up their entrepreneurial journey, or balancing both at the moment. So tell me about how did SEEK come about, and, as relation to, your job, how did those skills transfer and things like that?
Absolutely. So SEEK came later on. So I started the Spio group, which was a consulting company to the movie studios, helping them transition. And initially, what I wanted to do with digital cinema, when I sold my technology to the Boeing company, my patents to Boeing, I thought, wow, here we are, because at that time, distributing movies was so expensive. Let's say it would cost $30 million to distribute, to about 30,000 theaters and 150,000 screens. So it was still not possible for a lot of independents to be able to even just distribute, on that wide scale. And right. With the digital cinema technology that, we created, it took it from $30 million to 300,000. So it was a, substantial cost savings. I thought it would open up the market for independents, but I found that still very difficult for independents. So that's how my career transitioned from consulting with the movie studios and the big guys in terms of how to use a digital cinema technology, i.e. saving the money from spending 30 million to 300, to where I said, you know what, I want to create a platform where independents will be able to also distribute their content. Because one of the things that I found out working with the majors is that they buy the movies from the independents.
Yeah.
They buy most of it from the independents and then distribute it. So I'm like, why not allow them to distribute it themselves, and make a whole lot more money than what they're making, instead of paying them, peanuts for their work, and then, redistributing it. And the only thing that stood there in between the independent movie makers and their money was a platform, which is what I built. But once I built that platform for the independents to distribute their content, so that was like, the first distribution platform that I built. I wanted it to be ad supported. And it was still very difficult to get independent, movie makers to kind of distribute on the platform. And so I started working with a lot of ad agencies. So Coca-Cola Company was the first ad agency, was the first brand that, decided to use my platform. And then from there, a lot of the radio stations also wanted to use the platform to distribute their content. So I found that it was more brands that were, again, willing to take that chance of using the platform rather than a lot of the independents, and so it became a platform that was used by all the radio stations, actually. When you think about Hot 97 in New York, they were using that platform. You think about Power in LA, they were using that platform. Actually, Wendy Williams. At that time, Wendy wasn't even content. Yeah, the first video really that we distributed for Wendy before VH1 and all this came about, these were all on our platform that allowed them. Now you see the Breakfast Club, now you see Ebro and all these guys. When we went to talk to Ebro and those guys, they didn't even know what they were going to put on, on their online video platform, because everybody was thinking radio. And we're like, radio makes a lot of content. You speak 24 hours a day. Why not put a camera in there and let people see it? So my platform is really what transformed radio as we know it today, where now everybody is online, speaking, and we're seeing it. So that's how it just evolved. And then SEEK came about because I was looking at the next transition of the web, where I was seeing virtual reality. I tried on, Facebook Oculus, and I was like, wow, this is the future. This is the way I would like to consume content. And I know that this is the way a lot of people would like to consume content as well, especially things like music concerts, where I could be in the same shared space with people that enjoy the same music. So that's how it transitioned. It just evolved. I didn't set out to build SEEK. I kind of just walked towards it just by, putting one foot in front of the other.
Amazing. Now, were you still, so your first company, at what point did you, transition into entrepreneurship full time? So were you still balancing your career, or were you full-time entrepreneurship when you started CEEK?
No, I was balancing my career. And even before I started the Spio group, while I was working, I worked at the Aerospace Corporation, Ultra Corporation. I was in a lot of very technical environments where there were so many amazing guys that were looking, to meet someone. And in college, I had worked as a matchmaker to put myself through school. So I even launched on the side. I had a side hustle of a singles magazine going and trying to do all this stuff. And so I left work to focus on this full time. And then I found out that, wow, I ran out of money. So I had to come back to work and, balance it all at the same time. And the funny thing is, when I finally decided, you know what, I'm going to just go and focus on this full time, because now it was becoming more and more difficult to balance both. I had to be up 24/7. And then my work, I didn't want my work to start suffering before leaving. I wanted to leave a really good impression. And so that, once I had enough customers, I think one of the contracts was for like 300,000. Another one was, I had over $1 million in contracts before I decided to make the leap. And then also I sold, my patents fully to the Boeing company. So with all the money that I had from the customers, as well as selling my IP, I was able to then finally transition. But for a period of time, I was just doing both. I was balancing both.
Okay, so I want to talk about two things. One thing is, so you mentioned that you were working full time, then you left, and then you ended up having to come back. Mm-hmm. Now, for people, because that is something that we don't talk about a lot, is, sometimes life happens and you have to end up doing things you said you probably weren't going to do. Now, mm-hmm. What would you say was the difference as far as like some areas that you made some mistakes between the first time and then when you knew you got it right the second time? For anyone listening, like, do you think it was you weren't prepared? In what ways?
So in the first time when I left, even though I had contracts, what I did not account for was how long it would take my customers to pay me. So when you have contracts and you have these major companies and you're thinking, oh yeah, they're going to pay me, you're not even thinking about how long it will take to pay you. But some of them were taking as long as 6 months. I'm not going to put anybody on blast, but there was a major record label that I'm working with that took like a whole year to pay. Yeah. And so while I had all these big customers, and then I sold my house, I put it into, my company. It was just a lot. Everything, had gone into it. And I wasn't really raising capital at the time. Later on, I decided to raise capital, which was also a big, learning lesson, because the guy that I brought in was not, and people ask me, well, was he racist? He just didn't want a Black woman at the helm of the company after he invested in.
Wow.
So, yeah. That was something else. But so I just wasn't counting on how long it would take them to pay me. And then, I think like today, there are a lot of resources if you have a good idea to raise capital. Back then, it was not as easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because so you you started again, and at this time you're doing your second time. You're working full time and managing your company. I want to talk about, one, how was it for you to make sure that you weren't, there were some things that you weren't infringing upon with your full time, as far as like getting into trouble with company policies and things like that. Did you ever have to worry about those things?
Of course, especially working for a company like Boeing, because I had sold patents, and then I was working on a different technology that wasn't the same. And so one of the things that I did is I hired the same attorney that I used for the patents that I sold to Boeing as for the new patents that I was creating, to make sure there were absolutely no conflict of interest. And also, I just made sure that I did not use company time to focus on my work. Somebody once told me that when somebody hires you to do a job for them and they're paying you, if you're using their time to focus on something else, that's as bad as stealing. That's actually worse because it's not fair and it's not right. So that was the one thing that I ensured, that if I'm going to do this, I made a commitment to myself that I would never use company time to transact on my personal business. And that's something that I never did. In fact, when I told them that I was leaving, I had a promotion. They wanted me to be the head of, I was getting a massive promotion. It was my salary was going to double, but I knew it was time to leave because I had gotten to a point where I wouldn't be able to balance the two.
Got it. So, saying that, because one of my questions is going to be like, when people are listening and they're like, oh my God, you have this amazing career. And I think a lot of people struggle with, they're doing well at their jobs and they want to have this successful business. But again, it would come a time where you will have to choose.
Yeah.
And it's like, do I walk away? And for you, it was like, well, when you said you couldn't balance both, but how did you decide the choice between your company or work?
I knew that for what I do, it goes beyond work, right? It's a calling almost. And I understand when people say they have a calling to do something, because I live this, I breathe this. This is an extension of who I am.
Yeah.
If I won, people always ask the question, if you win $1 million, what would you do? I've had $1 million and this is what I'm doing, so this is what I want to do. And that $1 million went into this. I said, I sold my home, I sold my patents, I sold everything. So this is something that I am extremely passionate about. I don't have to think, twice about what is this, what's that. There are things that come completely natural to me. It doesn't make it any easier. It's just that I knew that this is what I wanted to be doing. And most of the people that, have come to work for me or are working with me feel the same way. We've been on projects where, sometimes you have to work around the clock, and one of the guys even, said, man, this is what we live for. And exciting, it's the opportunity to do this so that we can get up tomorrow and do it again. That's what the reward is. Of course they get paid too, but the reward is in, getting paid. The reward is the opportunity to do what we do every single day.
That's beautiful. And the sacrifice that it has paid off for you is amazing. So I want to take a step back just a little. So you mentioned that you vowed to yourself that you wouldn't do things for your job, for your company on your job's time. So how did you, for people who are listening, if they feel that their entrepreneurial journey is requiring a lot of them, how was your schedule at that time? Like, how did you make time to make sure you did things for your business and, managed both?
I hired people. So I hired a project manager who I would, talk to, like on my lunch break. I would step out and I would talk to her, make sure everything was going well. It also helped me delegate. And of course, I had to hire in areas that I don't have capability or competencies, but I hired somebody to be in charge. I wasn't paying her a lot, but it was someone who also loved and wanted to do that. And so that's how I was able to get around that.
Okay. And so any advice for people, because it seems like you're saying you prepared yourself in terms of making sure you had a team before you transition into full-time, some things that they can keep in mind when they're looking to make that transition, whether it be some tips or checklists to go through before making the switch?
Yeah, absolutely. So one, make sure that you use the time that you're working to completely, in terms of like when you have a secure base, make sure that you know that the plan, that at least you have a solid business in terms of what you're going to do, right? Because it's exciting, to want to go and do something else. But you also have to make sure that the business is solid. How am I going to make money from this? You have to be able to answer that question. How are you going to be able to make money from it? Because if you cannot answer how you're going to make money from it, and then go out there and try to make money from it as well, even if it's a consumer product, if you're building a platform for consumers, you're like, well, I want to build the next Facebook. So how am I going to get advertisers before I get all these different consumers on there? It doesn't matter what you do. There is a enterprise solution for it. And that's also a big part of how I've funded my company, is by finding those enterprise customers. So I was building a consumer platform, but I still went after Coca-Cola as a brand to come and advertise on there or use the solution, since we didn't have the eyeballs. So think about who is it that can use my business or my services, and make sure that there is a plan moving forward. I left when I had money that I knew was coming in. It just wasn't coming in as fast as I expected it to come in, but it was still coming in. And it wasn't just all from, my savings or from my patents, but it was also from customers. It just took, longer to come in.
So yes, I love that, because it's like, I know so many people may be frustrated in their current situation, but it's like, just stick it out, because in the end, where your goal is going to be doing your own thing. But, use that as an investment to get you there, and, learn from other people's mistakes or their learnings. So I love that you shared that. But speaking of money, so I want to get a little deeper into balancing finances between personal and then, like you said, like making sure your business is having money coming in. Mm-hmm. How were you able to balance your finances between the two? And maybe if you had any tips on like drawing the line between like, okay, this is what I'm going to use for my business, or this is how I'm going to have to get money and not use my personal finances.
It's very, very difficult, depending on the type of business that you're building, not to use your personal finances, and so for me, I mean, maybe there are some people out there that would be like, oh, don't use your personal finances. I don't know if I'm, the best person to speak on that, because for me, I just believe you have to believe in your idea enough to where you're willing to make those sacrifices. So maybe what you do is, maybe you're living where you're living is, so you cannot be an entrepreneur and build a business without making sacrifices. Because especially if you're going to go after investment, that nobody wants to go in and invest in a company. Let's say you're living in a lap of luxury, you're not using your own money, but I want you to come and invest in my business. Nobody's going to do that. So maybe you're living in a big house. You can say, look, I'm going to sell my house. I'm going to take some of that money. I'm going to put half of it into the business because I believe in it that much. And if you cannot do that, maybe you don't believe in the business. As a teacher, one of the things that they told us at graduation, we have these rings that they give us. It's made of metal. And they were telling us how that metal came from these bridges, that back in the day, if you're an engineer and you built a bridge, on opening day, they'll bring you and your family to stand under the bridge while the cars drove over it. So if, the bridge broke, you went with it.
Oh my.
Yes. And so when you're building that bridge, you got to remember that, what will you survive under the bridge? Will your family survive under that bridge? It's the same thing with entrepreneurship. If you're not willing to invest a good amount of what you have now in that business, then maybe it's not as good as you think it is.
That's definitely something to think about, and especially like you said, it depends on, what industry you're going in, because I always think about sometimes it's, depending on the industry, maybe you can, if you don't get, my mindset is if you don't get funding or you don't get things from someone else, will you still do the business anyway?
Exactly.
And, that's just how I always think in terms of like, operate as if you're not getting funding and build from there. So I totally agree.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Would you do it regardless? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So something to think about for those who are listening. And speaking of funding, I want to talk about how you were able to raise money for your idea or for your business. So discuss, raising, I think it was 10 million, correct? How much have you raised thus far?
Yeah, I think it's about 10 million.
Okay. So what was that process like? And any advice for listeners who are looking to raise funding?
It's been a long process, and I think that the funding that has come in, I mean, like when you compare it to other people that are trying to do the things that we're doing, it's a fraction of what they've raised, but it's still pretty substantial, especially for Black women. And it's been a process, because a lot of times when you look at capital for us, we are judged on performance. Like they need to see on the proof. And it's hard to get the proof before the funding. But for everybody else, they judged on ideas, potential. I could be a white guy, show up with, something on a napkin. And it's like, oh, wow, I think this and this, I'm going to capture the world. And it's like, hey, here's $100 million, capture the world. But you can show up and they're like, no, we want the proof, because there is this mindset there that just doesn't believe that we can do the things that we can do. So when I started out, I went to Silicon Valley. I was talking to people, and people were looking at you like, you don't look like an engineer. What does an engineer look like? And so regardless of, and I came into it thinking, oh, it's merit-based, I have a degree from Georgia Tech, and I graduated #1 from Syracuse University, and I worked for the Boeing company, and I was managing this and this, all the checklists that, they put out there. I checked everything and then some, but I found out the harsh reality of it is that it was just very difficult to raise capital as a Black woman, especially in Silicon Valley. So what I started looking at is all these different partnerships that I talked about. So we went to Facebook, for example, and said, hey, look, this is what we've built. These are the values that we can bring to you as an organization. This is how we could work together. And Facebook was one of my first investors. They wrote a check and we worked specifically. I went to Microsoft. I went to Amazon. Amazon gave us a cloud credit. We got, I think it was some of the biggest cloud credit they ever issued. It was over $105,000. And Microsoft, I think even did more. So I started building and looking at, okay, if I had this money, what are some of the things that I'll be doing with it? And then started going to the people and, begging and pleading with them and telling them about what I was doing. And so once I was able to get those people on board, for example, then I was able to also go to, other funds, Black Angel Investment Tech Fund. I was able to go to France. I was able to go to, other women investors. I was able to go to, New York investors that look at return, for example, and say, look, Facebook has written a check. So-and-so is, Amazon has given us this. Microsoft has given us this. I already have Universal as a customer. I already have this person and that person on the platform. We're already generating revenue. I think at that point had generated over $1 million. And so that's how I was able to do it and build the company, raise the capital, in spite of, not being able to get the capital from Silicon Valley. So I think it's worth kind of looking around and seeing, hey, look, is there somebody that would come in from, Silicon Valley or from this place or from that place, but very, very quickly assess that and see where your funding is going to come from or where you're going to be valued, because there is no point to go and, like, you hear this advice about, you got to bring your own chair to the table. You got to, if they won't let you in through the door, break through the walls. If they, lean in and this one and that one. I mean, while you're spending all that time, finding a hammer to break through the walls and you're leaning in and you're doing all this stuff, you have to find someplace where you're valued. After you do all that and you're sitting at the table sweating and, man, you got in by doing what? No, find someplace where you're valued.
Yes, exactly. And, I would ask, what do you think are the pros and cons of getting funding? And, do you advise everyone look to get it, or what are your advice on that?
I say that there are a lot of pros to getting funding, right? Depending on what you're building, you might not need funding, but what the advantage of getting funding is, it helps you build a better business, because there are going to be people asking you questions. You're going to be accountable to other people. There are going to be things that are going to be required. So quarterly reports, being able to report to your investors. And I'm sure some of my investors are saying, you need to get us those quarterly reports on time. But doing all those things, having a board, and also someone being able to bounce those ideas off of someone, having someone hold you accountable. Yes, you can hold yourself accountable, but there are also, when you find strategic investors, maybe they're going to have perspectives that they bring to you that you don't have. They're going to have resources that they bring to you that you don't have. For example, we have a huge festival that's coming on our platform. It's one of our investors that's organizing all of that. And he's committed a lot of time, a Black Star Fund headed by Kwame Anku. He's committed a lot of time to make sure that, things go well. So the advantage to me of going for investment is sort of like putting the mirror in front of you every day. And those are some of the advantages beyond the money.
Love it. And then I'd ask, for those who are listening, who are looking to get investments, what are some ways that they should prepare now? And what are some of the things that are looked at in terms of what's a good investment? Preparing as a leader as well.
Yes, you have to be prepared as a leader. You also have to be prepared to say no. You have to know, the right types of investment for you that will help you grow. As a company, has to be strategic. It's very difficult. But, there are a lot of funds that I've had to say no to. But you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared with your numbers. You have to be prepared with your vision. And you just have to be, prepared for people to see how that money that you're looking for, how that funding is going to help shape your vision, is going to bring your vision to life. And investors are not in the business of just putting money into other people's passion. They're not looking for hobbies, right? They're looking for return on investment. So what is the ROI that you're going to bring, and how are you going to disrupt the industries or what it is that you're doing? If you're just going to be a me too, and it's not going to be something that's going to bring some real ROI, a lot of times investors are not as interested. But know which type of investors that you're going for, depending on what you're building, so.
Love it. Well, Mary, that has been great advice. And I want to take a shift into some of the things that you're doing. You talked about, how you were able to create this amazing company by all the sacrifices that you've made, but then also the work that you've put in as far as your background. So I want to talk about SEEK, what it is exactly, and some of the amazing things that you're doing. So can you re-explain what SEEK is and just how it works and some of the things that you have going on?
Absolutely. So we are a virtual streaming platform for events and experiences. So think about going to a concert, right? You can actually put on a VR headset and you can be right there. Or you can also watch the concert on our website. And we've had concerts from everyone, from Ziggy Marley, Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga just tweeted about CEEK.
Wow.
2 days ago, yes, she
Wow.
posted, about CEEK, Demi Lovato, Quavo, and the list goes on. And so basically, you just put on the headset and you are teleported to all these different places. What we're seeing a lot of is, for example, for a lot of the frontline workers, like during lunchtime, our numbers just spike because a lot of people, hospital workers, for example, they're doing like yoga, but they put the headset on and they can be teleported to a safari in Africa, and they're just, looking at waterfalls, and they just teleported to these amazing places where they can just enjoy it. And in addition to we have our own virtual reality headset, which is available on, Seek.com. It's $100, which is much, much cheaper than, anything else on the market, but the same quality, if not better. And then we have a 360 headphone also, which allows you to hear sound all around you. So up, down, behind. And you can pair it with the VR headset, or it's good, on its own. I mean, Shar the God is using it on his, radio broadcasts. The UFC champion, actually 2 UFC champions are using it, maybe even more. Those are the ones. But Men's Health just called it one of the things that men cannot live without. So the headphones themselves are taking on a life of their own, even though they were made to accompany VR. It's great for gaming. A lot of gamers use it. A lot of people use it for music, for everyday use, for fitness, all of that. So that's basically what the platform is. And we have the streaming. We've had comedy. We've had DL Hughley and friends have, hosted a comedy show on our platform, and it just to enable. So in a way, you could see that I'm still continuing what I started out to do, which is enable content creators, whether it's entertainers or educators, to be able to create that unique content and distribute it, to all different platforms. So whether it's just a regular phone or a virtual reality headset, and who knows what's coming tomorrow. People are talking about light field projection and all of that. We're looking at that as well. So however people consume content, it's building that technology that allows them to do so in a way that's fun and exciting.
I love that. And, in hearing you say that, I'm like, oh my God, this is a totally new world to me, but it's just so great how innovative it is. And another innovative thing is how you're using crypto. So let's talk about that.
So in terms of crypto, especially inside of virtual reality, it's very difficult to have to take your wallet out and, get the coin, swipe card and all of that. And so one of the things that cryptocurrency allows us to do is for people to just fill their wallet with the C coins, and then they're able to pay for everything that they're doing with it. And the C coin also allows us to be able to track every single time someone watches content. So if I'm an artist, the biggest point of contention today is people don't know how they're getting paid. Like on YouTube, one person gets paid $3,000, another person gets paid $100, and another person doesn't get paid if they get 1 million views. But by using the crypto to track every time someone views your content on our SeeK platform, we're able to create this. Because what crypto does is it creates an immutable ledger. So it's like a whole bunch of people that are out there on their computers. Every single time something happens, they're like, I saw that. It happened. It happened. It happened. So when you have the consensus that it actually happened, then you're automatically paid. You don't need an attorney to put an agreement in place. We put the agreement into the technology itself. So whenever there's consensus, enough people see it and they say, yep, we saw it. It happened. Then you get paid for it. So you always have that full transparency. And then it's also fair because no matter where you're located, we can pay you the same thing. And we don't have to worry about, we have a huge international audience too, a global audience. You don't have to worry about, transfer fees and conversions and sometimes you transfer money overseas. I've transferred $600 overseas before and the person that's received it got less than half.
What?
Yes, transaction fees and whatnot.
Yeah.
With crypto, there's not that, conversion loss.
This makes me think like it's just so ahead. So I hear a lot. I don't know much about or anything really about crypto, but it makes me think about for someone like me, like what does the future look like, especially like with what you've created with virtual reality and paying with crypto. And I hear people saying the value of dollar and things like that. Like your opinion, what does the future look like?
To me, crypto is the future, and you heard things like, some of the coins that are out there that people will buy. It's no different than the people that bought Bitcoin when it was 10 cents and today it's worth, 40 something $1,000. So imagine, buying, some of these coins at 10 cents today. And then because it has utility, it's going to be worth, a whole lot more. It builds value. So you hear people say a lot of crypto maintains, or it stores value. It's a stored value. Today Bitcoin is $47,000. So it's which is why some people like to buy crypto because they know that there's a stored value. So but I don't know any investment advice, but I just know that that's why people like to use it. For us, we have our own CEEK coin, and people can buy the CEEK coin in order to enjoy concerts, in order to, track their content. But if they want to keep that, and, of course we want the value to build because then it gives an incentive to people to, buy the coin in order to buy tickets and whatnot. But if people want to buy the CEEK coin for other purposes, that's just completely up to them.
Oh my God. So for you, what does this feel like, creating such an amazing company, but also your journey? Like, how does it feel for you?
I just feel very blessed and I'm very thankful. I've worked very hard, but there are a lot of people that work hard too. Yeah. And I'm just thankful that some of the bets that I've taken have been the right ones, that I've met the right people. And if you're out there looking to do this, the number one advice that I would give you is if you want to go far, they said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, find the right people to go with. And so networking is super important. Finding people that have a shared vision, people that want to uplift together. And don't take offense at the people that don't want to help, because there are some people out there, that just don't want to help. And I came across a lot of those people, but don't let that stop you. Find those people that want to help. Don't waste time on the haters. Give that attention and time to the people that are loving on you.
Yes, tunnel vision, relentless.
Relentless.
Yes, I agree. Yes, I definitely agree. And what would you say? I like to ask this question. I'm pretty sure I already know the answer, but I want to ask, what has been the greatest risk for you in your journey?
The greatest risk in my journey, I would say, being a single mom and having to work as much as I work. It's like, you have to get to a point where you create that balance. And I think that has been, that's been a risk in the sense that finding a way to create that balance and, the sacrifices I've had to make. And, it's not always easy, especially when you're a single mom. And so that's been a risk. I mean, to me, the house, the this, the that, I put into it. I feel like those are all objects, you can get that back, but when you're building that bond with your child and, you can't always be there, or, they have to stay with their grandma at times, and this one and that one. So I would say that one has been, it's been the toughest for me.
And did you feel like, there were times where you had to set boundaries, and what did that look like for you? Because you were working, you were creating this business, and you were raising your child. Like, how were you able to set boundaries?
In what way? Like set boundaries for my child or set boundaries for myself?
For yourself, and, like when it came to business, so that you can, be there for your child, or be there in terms of like work boundaries, be there for your business.
A lot of times, especially early on, unfortunately, it's tough. Let's say an investor says, okay, we need to meet at such and such a time. You can't always be like, oh, okay, I'm not available because, I got to pick up my child, or so you have to. That's where the family comes in. That's where the support group comes in, to where you make a suitable arrangement so that your child is not suffering, but at the same time, you're able to also meet the demands of the business, because it's very, very easy for them to say, oh, okay, yeah, it's typical woman. You can't make it because, such and such. And they feel like, okay, well, the guys are not making those sacrifices. The guy is going to be there. The other person is going to be there, but you're not going to be there because you're using, because they don't look at it as you're making a sacrifice. They just look at it as you're making excuses, and so you have to be able to make accommodations early on until you get to a place where you're like, okay, now I'm going to work. I'm going to make sure that if I have to take my child to soccer, or if they have an important game, or, tennis or whatever that is, now I'm going to schedule my meetings around it. But early on, you don't have that luxury. And if you take that too soon, you can be branded, and then you can also lose out on a lot. So you have to make sure that you can make those accommodations. So whether it's grandma helping out, or sister, or, whoever it is that's helping out, you have to be able to accommodate, the business early in the game.
Mary, when you were saying that, one of the things that stood out to me was, even in our conversation, how you've taken this path. And I think one of the things I think is so inspirational, because you're doing something that a lot of people have not done, or you're doing something that's very innovative and new. But I also hear how you speak about, making sure that you're setting the tone for, your representation for us. Yes. And I hear that, and I just want to acknowledge that I hear that, because you're like, they're going to perceive me this way, and we don't have this luxury. So I acknowledge you saying that. And I know it's tough. Oh my gosh.
It is. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. That's something that, I take seriously, because whether they like it or not, that's just how they're going to perceive it. They're going to judge. I know that they're going to judge, 10,000 other people just based on you as one person. It's not fair, but that's just how it is now, which is why we have to support each other. Yes. So that we get in a position to where we can write the rules, we can write a new narrative for how we want entrepreneurship to be. I want to be able to invest back into other Black women, into other Black businesses, period. Because I know that it's not just, Black women that face challenges in raising capital. It's also Black men. Right. And I also want to be able to acknowledge those amazing Black men that have supported me. I've received investment from top athletes, and so the checks that have come in, I mean, some of the top athletes that wrote, big checks into the company because they like the product, and because they want to see this business become, have the full capabilities and everything that it's worthy of becoming. And so I want to be able to also be that person to give back, and to write those checks back to other people so they can build their businesses as well.
so amazing. And it brings me to a conversation I was having with my assistant once. And she's younger, but we were talking about, when we get people on the podcast or just in general communication, of course, because our audience is Black entrepreneurs and the people we work with are typically Black. And she was talking about the way we communicate in email, how she was like, oh, I was used to it. I was expecting it to be everyone to be so formal, but it's just like, it's really like how we speak, like, okay, got it. Good, good. And I was telling her, I said, well, you got to think about it. We're creating these spaces so that we can create a business and how business is done our own way, because we've been taught that it should be done this way. And you get these communications from these very successful people and you think it should look this way. But we're saying, no, this is how business is done. We're still amazing. We're still smart. And this is how we communicate. So it's definitely creating our own lanes. And, I love that.
Exactly. Creating our own spaces and not going into spaces where we're wanted and, fighting and giving our value. Like, you hear people say lean in, and there's this whole advice. I'm sure you've heard the whole lean in concept, which to me comes from a place of privilege. It also says that you cannot do things the way that's comfortable and natural to you. You have to adjust and do it some other way, but you can adjust and do it some other way and it's still not going to work, because if you are bringing that value, we have to create those spaces where we can operate naturally, because the brilliance that you see from other people is not that it's encoded into their DNA. It's just that they're given that soft and fertile ground where they can grow. So we have to build those instead of trying to contort ourselves into all these different spaces that are not meant for you, that don't even want you there. Because when you lean in, you are labeled as aggressive and abrasive, right? They don't see it as lean. When you lean in, they're like, lean back. So somebody's like, lean in, lean back, all this stuff. But, that comes from a place of privilege. So let's build our own spaces.
Yes, and to anyone listening, and that is why it's important for you to keep going, because you are going to create that space where, people are going to feel like they belong, they're wanted. And I think that, it's a beautiful thing that's happening these days, especially with companies like yours that are creating those spaces. So I am very thankful. You're welcome. So we got a little deep there, but I wanted to acknowledge it. I think we must. But I want to ask, any advice you would give to an entrepreneur in their first year of business?
Learn as much as possible, and then also reach out to the people that are where you want to be. It's not always about competition. There is a lot of collaboration, because people will say, well, why'd you reach out to Facebook? They have a VR headset. And because there is value in collaborating. And to me, it's not, is Facebook a competitor? Is the Oculus a competitor? In some ways, but at the same time is also collaboration. And we're collaborating now. And they enabled and empowered me to be able to build CEEK, with their investment. And we continue to work together. So reach out to the people and companies. And in your first year, you have to find those powerful partnerships where you can be of value. If there is any advice, because if we hadn't gotten like the Facebook, Universal Music, the Amazons and Microsofts of the world, you got to walk on those shoulders. I mean, those giants are there. And today, all of them also have like diversity programs, and it's not just talk. They really want to help. The next thing is they got to write checks, even bigger. Yeah, but they do want to help. So reach out if you have value, to offer to them.
Love that. And any favorite tools and resources that you've used that have been helpful for you in your entrepreneurial journey?
Because we have a big virtual team, we have offices in Miami, LA, but we have a lot of virtual team members as well. So Skype is a good one. Teams is a good one. Slack is a good one. In terms of communication, reaching out. LinkedIn is a valuable tool to be able to, reach out to practically anyone. And sometimes you'd be surprised, who reaches back out.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the tools that we use: Airtable, Trello. So those are all, different tools that we use.
Amazing. And so, Mary, you work very hard and you continue to work very hard. I want to know, what are some ways that you wind down or just practice self-care?
Ways that I wind up practice self-care. I love to paint. I love to paint with my son. He loves to paint also. I love to work out, actually, to me. But even though, I haven't been working out in a while, but it's one of those things that I actually enjoy doing. I enjoy, so those are the things. Painting is a big one. And playing the piano, I don't play it as well, but it's something that I want to, put more time into, and then meditating. And I love to meditate, just meditate. And one of the things that helps me, and it doesn't even feel like I'm meditating, is when I put on my CEEK VR headset. We have these things called Mind Chill. It's just water flowing, and I just look around and I do that, regardless of what's going on. I try to unplug at least, 20 minutes a day. I started doing that because when we noticed, I said, the spike with all those frontline workers that are with all those nurses and doctors that are using CEEK to really chill and relax. So we started creating more of that content, and I use it too. I use it every single day. I just put my VR headset on and I look around, and it's a mind chill. There's one with this elephant that's just walking. There's another one with a deer that it's just like grazing, but it's so calming. And I swear sometimes I even feel like a chill, like it just feels like the wind is blowing, it's really serene, but those are the things that I do to unwind and, and chill.
I love that. I'm going to have to get me some CEEK headphones because I love the white noise machine when I'm sleeping. So it's very calming to me. So I'm actually going to have to try those out. Okay. So I'm glad you shared that. And I want to ask, what favorite, so these are some like off the wall questions, but what TV show do you wish still aired?
Oh, what TV show? Oh, you know what? I love Girlfriends. I wish they were still going on. I didn't want that to stop. I definitely did not want Girlfriends to stop. So that's one of my favorite. Yep. And the one with Queen Latifah and
Living Single.
I
started watching that.
Too. Yes.
Love it. Okay. Yeah. And what's the last item that you splurged? Oh, the biggest splurge, last big splurge that you made on yourself?
Last big. I'm moving. So yes. So let's see.
That's a splurge.
That's a splurge. Yeah. I'm a veteran. I actually just bought a home thanks to the VA loan. Yes. So I'm very excited about that. I would say I bought a painting. I bought an NFT painting. Actually, I think that was a big splurge. Okay. I find weird things, like my splurge is like a domain name that I've been watching for a while.
Listen, those go for good money. I had to buy one back once. I'm like, we don't want this amount?
Right. So, but I sell them too, so sometimes I pay for 1,000 and then, somebody wants to buy it for 10 and stuff like that. I had a Google domain name that they bought from me too. So.
Wow. Okay. You have to come back to give us all the tea on, these ways that you monetize, because you sold your patent. Now you're trading domain names. Like, you know how to get the money. So we're going to have a whole nother episode on that. Love it. And I want to ask finally, what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
What it means to me to be Black in business is to really create, to help reshape the future for our kids, to help build a new way that we look at ourselves and a new way that we return value to our community. That's what it means to me to be Black in business. A new way to make things more inclusive, definitely open more doors for us.
Love it. Beautiful. And Mary, this has been so amazing and valuable and inspirational. I'm pretty sure everyone who's listening has been inspired and they're walking away with something that they can use. I want to ask, how can people connect with you, support you, any new projects or releases coming up that they should know about?
Buy the headphones, buy the headset, and if you've got kids, definitely buy the headset. Also have them try it out because you don't know what's going to inspire them to build the next, big business, and buy the headphones for yourself, not just to support me because they're great products. And if you can't afford to buy any of the stuff, at least sign up on CEEK.com and see what's happening, and let's just stay in communication.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate you, and I wish you the best of luck in everything that you're doing and continue to shine and inspire others. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. And for everyone listening, until next time. There were so many moments in this conversation that truly resonated with me and my personal journey in transitioning from full-time work into entrepreneurship. Mary not only gave us an honest picture of how much work it takes to create or find the balance between your work and your business, but she was also so raw about her experiences and journey that it made me realize how important it is to constantly have honest conversations of the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. One thing she said that stuck with me is that we need to believe so much in our dreams that if someone else was to invest in it, you would have already put in the work, so that when the transition happens, you have already put the plans in place. Remember to not get locked in the hype of doing everything yourself or trying to cut corners. It will take multiple tries before you strike the balance, but stay on the path regardless. Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to check out blacktobusiness.com/65 for complete show notes and resources mentioned during this episode. We would also be so grateful if you could rate and review this episode and our show to let us know how helpful this has been for you. Until next time, family.